Hi, my name is Margot Stedman, and I'm the Education and Community Engagement Director here at the Rockford Symphony Orchestra. Thank you for joining us for this session of Local Pairings. You're about to meet Rhea Hodgson, RSO viola player. In addition to playing with the Rockford Symphony, she plays with symphony and chamber groups throughout the region, including in Madison and in Dubuque. In addition to being a musician, she's also a teacher and maintains a private studio as well as teaching group classes. Soon we'll be releasing a chamber orchestral performance on our digital stage, and of the 5 string players on stage, Rhea is the violist that you'll see there. She will be leading a conversation with the Lone Canary, an Americana folk group made up of Heather Camacho and Jesse Fox. These 2 musicians are native to Rockford, have released 2 full-length albums, have toured nationally, and most recently have won 4 Rockford area Music Industry, or RAMI, awards. They won for Composer of the Year, Album of the Year, Song of the Year, and the Critics' Choice Award. Let's join the conversation.
Any musicians, I think.
Yeah. But we were talking about it for a while, and I was like, we've been playing together for years. Heather asked, she was like, well, do you think we should just start playing together, like, actively? Because there was like 2 other girls. It sounds like a dating thing. There's 2 other girls I tried playing with before. It didn't go as quite as well. Heather offered up, and we were like, yeah, let's try it, give it a shot. And over the next few years, we kind of were fine-tuning our sound. Heather initially started playing keyboard
Cool.
and stuff with the band, which is sometimes missed, but it's a very big thing to cart around.
I do love playing the piano.
But it turned into, it was a nice swing though, because for a long time I've loved acoustic folk, old country, should I say, too, like not necessarily new pop country, but like that kind of feel. And she played the violin, oddly enough, and we started working that into the set, and that's kind of what stuck.
And the violin is a lot easier to carry around than a full size, like weighted keyboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it kind of blossomed from there. And as we've been kind of playing together for the last, as this band is since, again, 2014, 7 years almost.
Almost.
Right? Yeah,
June.
it feels that way.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
We missed a whole
That's
year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we've been, we started touring. We've done a couple national tours and a lot of local stuff too. So it's been a fun journey so far.
That's so awesome. You mentioned like having kind of a genre shift. What was your music like before?
I
was super what the kids call emo.
Okay. And he had like longish floppy hair to go with it.
Oh yeah. And so I just played a lot of sad, weepy songs, which hasn't really changed much. We do a lot of sad songs still, but they were a lot more angsty, should I say.
Yeah.
But it was just me on a guitar just screaming out really off pitch stuff, to whomever passed by and listened.
So I was like, please let me play with you.
She's like, I can fix this. Let me try. So we gave it a shot.
I love that. Well, with the mellowness of the violin comes a new attitude, new world.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I was in a band that was very Dave Matthews-y.
Cool.
So it was like late 90s, early 2000s. And that was my first experience playing the violin, not in a classical setting. So that was a lot of fun. With some other friends, we did that. So that was kind of my first genre that I was playing in. And then I kind of didn't play for a while. And then Jesse was like, I mean, you play the violin, right? And I was like, well, yeah, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
So it took some convincing and a lot of practicing to kind of get back into like modern type music. Yeah.
I mean, that takes some serious chops to be able to sit in with a band. I'm always very like in awe of that, not having like all the notes right in front of you, and just kind of like being able to roll with those changes is really impressive.
Her whole family has been like musical, and it's always fun because she's just naturally can just follow along with anything. And that's like stuff that's always been interesting to me because she can just hop up and play. And I'm like, I could not do that at all. So it was a very helpful situation to have that join me.
Yeah.
Oh,
My
yeah.
family is very much like a Von Trapp situation. We all sit and sing together. And
Christmas is all
Christmas
songs
is
and music.
amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. That sounds really fun. Well, so I don't mean to just like, really like go over your history, but it sounds like you guys grew up together. Are you from Rockford originally, or where did you come from?
Yeah, both of us are from Rockford.
Mhm.
We went to East High School.
Oh, cool.
Again, I think we've known each other since we were kids, and
We weren't like best friends, but we knew
No.
each other
Yeah.
most of our childhood, I
Yeah.
would say. Yeah.
and I would say actively we've been playing. Oh man,
Since high school.
almost 30 years together.
That's
We'll say
awesome.
25.
Which sounds really. I was like, are we even that old yet? No, yeah, it was
No.
like 25 or so years though, together to some degree. And but yeah, we've all been from Rockford here and have not
All of us.
all two of us. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that leads me to my next question, a little bit more in the present, is you obviously have really deep ties in the Rockford community. I'm guessing that you've had a little bit of a pause this year, and we'll talk about that for all of us and maybe in a
Sure.
minute. But
Yeah.
what, like, is there a venue in Rockford that you are most excited to get back to playing?
There's so many. There's so
Yeah.
many good restaurants and places that do live music. We will be at Prairie Street Brewing Company. We're just really close with them, and we play there every year. And so we'll be back this summer. They do Monday night kind of acoustic shows.
Cool.
So I am excited to get back there. The oldest bar in town is Mary's Place, and it's pretty kind of rowdy and dingy, but that's where
in a cozy way.
Yeah, and very small.
Oh,
But it's a lot of fun, and they have really good bands that go through there
cool.
all the time. Yeah, so it's a bit of an adventure to go and to become part of their people. But
they got some good people there. They have good people.
yes, but
That's wonderful.
yeah, so those places I'm really looking forward to.
There's a lot of the summer pop-up stuff too. I think that'll be huge this year as things slowly open up. Because a lot of internal places like Mary's, they're still not booking music. But I think I'm most excited to get out this summer and just be out and around playing to people, not just online.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Even if like it makes me like long for the days we played to empty coffee shops, like two people and I was like, oh, those were the good days. That was great.
So much connection.
Yeah, right. Over the blenders and such,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Good times. Good times.
But yeah, our hope is to be out there soon, and we have quite a few good shows I think coming up this summer. We're excited about.
Mhm.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's I think this summer is going to be a very exciting like live music time as everything opens up just a little bit more and we can all be a little closer. It'll be really nice. So you mentioned playing online. What have y'all been up to this year? I saw on your bio, like you mentioned a lot of touring and like that's kind of your usual rhythm for your year. How have you transitioned in the pandemic with less
I would
less
say
going on?
it's been kind of in a weird way nice because we've been such go since we've started this band. I mean I will say I absolutely miss it, but it's been kind of nice to have a breather because it was a forced breather. Heather, like for those who are listening, Heather are not a couple. A lot of people assume that as a duo. We're married to other people. I have three daughters at home, and my wife is very active in the historical community here too. She works at the Erlander House Museum, and but we just had our third baby in, man, I don't sleep anymore. It's September. And
Oh my gosh,
so it's been,
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And it was kind of a forced, nice kind of break to say, like, I don't have any reason to be gone. And it's just like it gets more intentional family time from there. So so beyond that, you know, it was that, and then the handful of online shows.
Yeah, so we didn't have like regular live streams, like some bands were doing weekly or whatever. But we every 3-4 weeks or so early on, like last year, we were doing some Facebook live shows, and they're fun, and we always had a good amount of people show up, but it's just so different, like to just have like a phone right there that you're singing to, and you don't know, like, do people like it? Like, are they actually watching? You know, like it's well, still fun, and people will comment and everything, but.
And I'm sure you guys, I mean, have gone through the same thing, right? Like you've played a few online things and done that thing, and it's a different vibe. It's so,
it almost feels more like like you're practicing, recording a practice or something.
Yeah, definitely. I played. My husband is also a musician. He plays the bass, and we gave like a little recital in the fall on Facebook Live, and like it was wild, like sitting in my own kitchen as we like kind of like we did here. We had the like little green room, like, you know, like a moment as people come in. And like sitting in my own kitchen, like feeling those same nerves that I might feel like backstage before a performance. It was like, what's happening? Like, it's just a phone on a table that like my cat's gonna knock over.
Like, how much can I clean up this background before?
Totally.
It's not quite the same as the Cornetto.
But at the same time, like I've also watched some Facebook Lives, like of some of my favorite bands, and I kind of love it. Like I kind of love seeing what your lives are like, and like it's a really intimate kind of invitation. Like it's kind of cool.
Well, that's what I told him. I've watched a couple as well. One of which was Nickel Creek, who is obviously amazing. If you haven't listened to them, you should. But so I told him, I was like, I think it's more awkward for us as a musician, obviously, as for the person watching it, because I loved it. Like I put it up on my TV, and it was like I was in that space with them, and they're just like chatting and playing, and I was like, okay, so this is okay. I think it was good to experience that
from the other side.
From the other side.
Well, and I think that was another benefit too, is because like being active musicians who play a lot, like we never get to go see other people's shows. And so it was kind of like one of those moments where like, oh, I can go listen to this while I'm eating dinner at home with my daughters, you know, and you get to experience live music without having to be out and combating with our schedules, you know, so
absolutely nice. Well, it sounds like you've been like winning some awards. You have maybe a new album. Have you been writing songs during this time as well? Or was this all kind of like from before?
So the album was released January of 2020.
Okay.
And
I gotcha.
We got to play our album release, I think it was February, at a really cool restaurant in town called the Norwegian.
Yes.
And we played it full band, which we only do every once in a while. And it was
a sold out show.
Very cool.
Oh my gosh.
And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we had last year, not to like be depressing, but we probably had our best shows yet lined up for last year. And it was just like, we're just waiting for emails like, sorry, we have to cancel, which, I mean, we saw it coming, obviously. And it's just
it's so defeating because you can't do anything about it, you know, and it's fully warranted. And like, oh, there goes that year. Hopefully that comes back.
So it feels like we just released it. Like it's still brand new because we haven't really played it out.
We haven't toured with it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, but yes, we do have a new album. I'm just going to call it new. It's new for us. It's called Leave the Gray, which is one of the songs on the album. And I attempted to write during quarantine and through the last year. But some people I think were super inspired, but I just was not. Like, I would try to sit down and I'm just like, I don't know what to write about. Like, nothing's happening. I'm at home. And I mean, I guess I could write about that, but So we haven't written anything since, unfortunately.
Yeah, I cannot write with 3 daughters, and it's just impossible. And it's kind of funny though, because like we did a lot of our writing, especially this last album, while on the road. We kind of use those moments to say like, okay, well, we have, X amount of time for travel, X amount of time for playing these shows, and then all we have to do is like go back to the Airbnb or wherever we're at. And so we're like, we have no excuse. We need to write something. And especially this specific album, the newest one, was a big change for us, because the very first album we put out, most of the songs I had written myself. That was like while I was playing solo, and a lot of the songs that are on that album were from me just writing. And Heather wrote, I think 2 or 3, 2 of them, kind of in the process of recording that album. And yeah, so it was very like short notice kind of writing, and she'd never written before. And so this album is kind of fun and unique because it allowed us to write together. Like it helped us kind of feed off each other and build the sounds that we've been wanting to make. Whereas last time, I think a lot of it, we were just trying to make the sounds happen in recording because we were so fresh. And when we first started recording the album, we had just started playing together as a band, because I had booked that for me to be just recording by myself.
Yeah, we started playing in June, and then I think we started recording in September.
Wow-ish,
I think that fall.
Yeah, so it was a panic record a bit, and I still love the songs and how it turned out. But it was just it was kind of refreshing this time to say like we got to kind of like do this together this time and have our own pieces fill out in each other's songs and kind of work together. So it was kind of nice in that regard to be able to do that on the road in those things.
So if anyone on here knows the band Starlight Radio, which is another local Rockford band, they don't play together anymore, but they were pretty big for a little while. One of the members, Jordan, is the guy that produced, and he played on our album. And he just did an amazing job recording it, and we used his studio and everything. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what in normal time, you're kind of describing like a little bit of like how you like what your schedule is like on the road, which is really interesting to think about, kind of that piece of like, what do we do in between like the traveling and then performing? Like there's actually still it's kind of like your business, your office hours, just like in a very non-traditional way, or a different way than, maybe other people think of things. What in normal times, and maybe now too, how often do you like practice together when you aren't like performing or like in preparation for some shows?
Because I feel like a lot of times I see bands, even local ones, and I'm just like, oh, like I'm a musician too, but I have that weird thought process like, oh, they just write together all the time and they like do this stuff together. And I was like, no, we both like, had full-time jobs and things like that. And so, we basically schedule one night a week to try to get together, and almost all of that goes into booking. And it's very little made time for actually writing.
Right. Well, we'll practice because we do some covers as well, like for longer shows that we have at bars or restaurants. And so we'll go over and practice some newer ones. But yeah, most of the time is trying to just book shows or get back to people. So writing is hard to fit in. We're getting the itch though. So it's like, we need to write some new stuff, which is good. It's exciting. So we get together every week and just do whatever business needs to be done, and that's just, it's quite a variety of tasks. So
it's not as glamorous as you would hope.
I definitely hear that
too, and I'm sure same, like it's just like, no, you don't sit there 24/7 and practice, it's on free time, and there's very little free time unless you carve it out. And, with spouses and kids and work and things, and like trying to do this professionally and tour with it, it's like another job on top of jobs. And
Absolutely.
and I'm sure again you kind of go through the same thing a little bit. I would assume. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe you do practice.
I mean, it's interesting because like I mean, if you think about it, like you're a duo, so like once a week, every week, like that's that makes sense. And then you're also performing, which is kind of a practice in and of itself. Not to say that you're like practicing while you're performing, but in that like actually performing takes its own practice, that like it's kind of a different skill that you can only practice when you're doing it, I feel like.
And it's hard
like
to practice how to perform.
Is it hard?
Exactly,
I would say,
yeah.
Is it hard for you to do that on your own? Because I feel like for me, I almost never practice when I'm on my own. Like it was a hard thing. Like I need to have the full feel of like what we do live, which like in your regard, like you have an orchestra.
Well, I was gonna say it's like, I mean, there's, maybe 80 people on stage in a normal orchestra concert. Yeah. And like for Rockford, we're not playing every single week. We usually, play like once a month or something like that. And so we practice, a few times within that week. It's usually like 4 or 5 rehearsals and then a concert. But like, it's bringing all of these people together kind of like, all at once, and then putting it together very quickly, and then we're ready to go. And that, I think there's a lot of like individual practice that happens to get ready for that. But, in terms, when you really think about like having 80 people all coordinated to do the right thing at the right time, like even with someone up there telling us when to do it, that's still like takes quite a bit of coordination. But yeah, so it's just interesting to kind of like those different rhythms, and it always feels better by the end, like by April when we're having like our final masterworks, at least for me, I can't speak for everyone, but like, I always feel like, we've been doing it every month. Everyone is kind of like in this rhythm of like, we show up, we play together. And it always feels a little fresh that like first time back in September.
I have a question for you too.
Oh, okay.
Like, outside of the orchestra stuff, do you learn or play other songs too, or is it just kind of like what you are planned to play? Or
that's a very good question. Yeah. And I think everybody is different. I've been playing a lot of solo Bach in the quarantine, and a lot of like Suzuki Book 1 violin, because I'm a teacher as well. So I have actually played maybe more. This is a secret, but I've maybe played more violin in the last year than I've played viola, just because I've been working with my students and things like that, and a lot of them are violinists. But I try to keep a balance of like preparing ensemble things that I'm doing kind of for work, and then like my own personal solo stuff, just to kind of, it's kind of like eating your vegetables, like keeping a balanced diet. But it definitely, I mean, as you say, like I'm wearing a lot of hats. I'm a music administrator, I'm a teacher, I'm a performer. And so there's not always time to devote to just like, I'll wake up and, have just whatever I want in the morning, and then I can do some Beethoven in the afternoon. Like, sometimes you have to like really make like a schedule of like, okay, I'm gonna look at that quartet piece for 20 minutes, and then I've got orchestra music for an hour and a half, and that is all I've got. So the realities of being a musician. No, it's not just you.
So I went through the Suzuki program here in Rockford.
Oh my gosh!
In the day when it was at Rockford College at that point,
cool.
Now Rockford University. I was 10 years old, and my grandma played violin, and so that's why I wanted to play. I was like, it'll sound amazing, and it certainly did not the first couple of years.
That'll happen.
But I'm so glad I did it for probably 6 years, and I did some orchestra stuff. And I went to some summer camps and everything. And I'm so glad that I did that. And then added some of the stuff on top. Like it's such a good foundation for like improving or writing music, like to know some of the theory for that. I loved being in it. So
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, that means you must have had a very good teacher also to give you like a good foundation that you could like make your own. That's always my goal as a teacher, is that like whatever someone's goals are, that they can do that. How do you like, what is your process together for writing songs? Do you like, forgive me, does one person do lyrics, one person do melody? Do you collaborate on both? Like, how do you approach that?
We're kind of the opposite, which it probably works. It has worked so far, at least. I usually start with music. I love to just sit with my guitar and kind of put chords together and come up with like a mood. And then I'll be like, well, what could this be about? And like even kind of go from there. Or I would maybe have some lyrics or just some journaling or notes on things that I could be like, well, this could work with that mood. But I think you do it a little differently.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's one thing I think Heather has learned probably from violin and learning how do you improv well and things like that. She's a lot better with melodies than I am.
Okay.
And I'm more of a words person. I've always been very, very into and about words and what songs are trying to explain and say.
Words are the last thing I know about a song. I'll listen
she'll
to a song.
know the bass line.
I'll know where the drum fills come in, and I'll know everything about a song.
And I was like, yeah, but what does it say? And she's like, I don't know. I was like, but to me, like, I think that's also the weird in between that I love about classical too, though, is that like it's so good at telling stories without words, and that's a beauty in itself. But in our genre, like more so like what you would call folk Americana, they're heavy into storytelling. It's like old folk and old lyric
Bob
writing.
Dylan.
Yeah, it's really about like what's. I mean, the melody is sugar coating on top of it all, I think too. But like, what are you trying to get out of the story? And I think that's something that's always inspired me. Like I've always loved listening to words and why people wrote this or why that came out this way or that way. And that's how I've always functioned. And I think that's why we kind of complement each other really well as a duo. Because her writing has especially gotten much better in the last several years, I would say.
Thank you.
But we sit there and tweak each other's things a lot, and she'll look at my melodies.
No, but I'll even tell him, I'm like, tell me if these words are dumb, because like I'll write these words and I'm like, I don't know.
I didn't have to really tweak much of the last album. It was pretty straightforward. She wrote and this is the fun part. Like, so we don't write a lot of happy songs. They're all pretty downers, but like some have really nice upbeat melodies. But I would say Heather and this is on me. Like I feel like I'm just attracted to like sad songs. I don't know why. But Heather wrote probably the saddest song that we've ever written, like this last album. And I was like, oh, good job.
The one that Margot, right? The one that Margot was playing. It's for the intro.
It's what we won the awards for.
It's called Out of Time.
Yeah.
And that one, for once, it's based on like 3 actual like people or scenarios in my life, and that
it's unresolved.
Yeah,
it's just 3 separate.
There's no real ending.
Verses.
There's nothing.
Which
is hard for me. I'm like, you need to resolve the story.
But it deals with kind of pain that pretty much everybody goes through at some point, and I think it was just the writing behind it was so good. But it's always interesting though, because we've prepped a few of these things if you want to hear a few, but like it's fun just starting like from a base kind of like junky thought and seeing where it like expands. And I think that's one of the fun parts about music and even just writing melodies and things like that. It's just like, well, I have this one melody stuck in my head. I'm gonna write it down and I'll come back to it in about a year. And you never know where it goes. And we've had so many songs that way where it just kind of like expands after being insanely stuck on it for a while, and then you let it be, and then you come back to it for a while. So I mean, we can show you a few if you want to. We have like 2 songs.
Yeah, definitely. No, I just wanted to draw one more comparison, which is it's interesting what you're saying of like, okay, this is like kind of a fragment and I'm just going to put it to the side. I feel like as classical musicians, like I always feel like I'm like playing detective of like what the composer intended. And like, you know, when we have a conductor, they have ideas about that too. And I play in a string quartet. And so we're always like, you know, practically coming to blows about like what, you know, a certain tenuto mark. Yeah. What the mood is based on like these like weird little details that are written in the music. And but it sounds like you are actually also kind of detective, like kind of like internal detectives. Like even though you're composing it, you're like coming to each other and like finding those same details of like, so what do you mean here? And like, what can this be? That's just like really interesting.
I think, that's, it's good to hear from you. Like, it's always been funny to me, like, cause I've never played classically. I've enjoyed the music, but like seeing people, like the pieces shift so much based on who's the orchestrator, and it's all based, and you never think about it, but it's all based on how they think it's, you know, and coach people through it. You're like, oh yeah, it definitely changes if you see it differently.
We kind of go with that with the songs that we do cover that we don't write.
Yeah.
As much as possible, we try to do them
in our
differently in our own style.
I love that.
Like not at all like probably how the recording is. Like it might take a verse and chorus for someone to feel like, oh, that's the song they're doing, before they figure out what it is, which we love. We're like, if they don't know what it is,
like
then
that.
Goal achieved.
Yeah, basically. Let me pull up a couple of these real quick. So I'll save the one, we have the one that actually won a few of the Rammys here, but I'll do that one last. So this other one is one that I wrote while we were on the road. It was I think the initial recording, we usually always have our either phones or some sort of recording device on us, because especially when we're together, we just like literally just tinker around. It's just trying to figure out what melodies work, what don't, like what can we make out of. And then we have a list of like 50 different like random, you know, audio clips that we'll just go through.
Clips.
Wow.
Oh, that was a pretty nice lick. Oh no, that one can go. Definitely that can go. You know, like, and but this one we wrote like while we were on tour in Colorado, and it was kind of about missing home. And it's just kind of funny because this one we were having a hard time trying to figure out where to go with it, and I wasn't loving the feel of it initially. It felt too like swingy, poppy, like weird. So here, I'll just pull into it and you can see the progression of where it came from. The initial playing with it. The first recording is terrible. Let me just like throw that out there. Don't judge too hard. It's literally, and this is the one thing, like,
or
starting
judge
out,
all you want, but just don't tell us.
I mean, it's like the scribble, right? It's like,
just like
it's the rough draft.
It's like I have no melody in my head, but I'm going to sing what comes out of my throat, and and we'll see what goes on. And then it slowly progressed into something slightly different, and the mood changed a bit in it as we went into the recording process. So let me see if I can screen share this really quick. I think that will work. Let me pull this back up. I think I shared
This is for sharing the drive.
as long as I don't hang up on you guys. Okay, sound shared. Good. Okay, so this is the early recording of it. We were just on tour. We had like maybe the hook. All right, so I'm gonna see if I can. So that's so embarrassing to hear. But you could hear that, yeah. Okay.
It sounds great, guys.
It's like all I really had was like a couple lines that I liked the idea of, and we're like, okay. And this is how I write. I have a couple lines of lyrics. Like, how do I put some music to this that makes sense? And then Heather had some ideas. We started playing around with it, and it. Let me see. I'll refresh it. And then it expanded to this. They seem blinking out and dragging for miles. that was a little bit after. You can see like the tempo shift. A little bit of it got more of a swingy feel to it. The groove changed.
Yeah.
And Heather was starting to tinker around with violin. I had a couple more lyrics to build off of it. And then I'm going to just jump to the finished product, which is a nice, which is, again, the evolution of this is so bizarre because we only play as a duo most of the time.
Okay.
So you never know how, you can't see me, sorry, right?
Oh, no, we can see you. Yeah.
Oh, you can? Okay, I didn't know how that works. All right, so we play as a duo most of the time, and I never know how those things will expand into as a band because we don't really think through the extra parts. And it's kind of like playing in an orchestra a little bit where you're like, oh, there's other parts that we have to figure out.
Right.
And so you kind of get that composer feel, or, and you're like, how we want to build this? How do we want to do this? How do we add this instrument here or not? And it was just kind of bizarre to get into in the recording. And I'm sure our producers always hate us for this because we don't come prepared. we're like, I don't know, help us out, man. So
write the song.
But this is where we got to. Yeah, right. This is where we got to by the end of it, built out. Skip ahead a little bit. Where you are, come home, haunting me. And then this kind of built into like a solo part that Heather and our guitarist, the producer, built here. So anyway, I never know how long to play with those. But it's always kind of fun to see how that expands because you're kind of at the will of, if we choose to have a producer in the album and working on these things, you're kind of at the will to see like, well, where would you carry this? What would you do with it? And it took us a long time to like settle on having Jordan McDonald record this album because we know so many like awesome artists and awesome people in town that do recording and things like that. So, but we've always loved how his brain expanded into the parts that he builds out in their band, Starlight Radio. And so it was kind of nice to like work through that stuff with him and like working out parts that we would have never thought about doing. Which the next song, again, I'll kind of go through this quickly, but the next song is the one that Out of Time that Heather wrote. It started as just a melody that Heather wrote on the guitar and some lyrics. And then I think last second in the studio, we decided to make it a piano song.
We're like, we should do it with piano.
And I was I was like, you know what? I just feel like it needs something different. And we went about changing up how it came out.
And it adds such a different voice to the song.
Yeah.
We don't perform it live that way now, obviously, when it's just the two of us. But I love how it turned out on the record. So again, I'll start
the progression
with where it started.
No, I love this. This is like getting to see like the bones. It's really cool.
So this is every time. Hold on. Let me refresh this. Okay. This is how Heather sent it to me initially, I think. I was there. So I'll end it there really quick. but it's just kind of, it starts that way, and then it slowly through the process. This is, I'll just show the quick video. This is, we just released this recently. This is what we've been doing in COVID. We've put out a few videos of kind of how we perform some of these songs acoustically, because most of the stuff on the album is built out as full band things, which I also love the build out of that. But this is kind of how we perform it, which is pretty similar to how Heather planned it initially. So you can see it's not a whole lot different from there, but that's kind of how we end up doing it live. But this song very specifically was very interesting to build out in the studio, mainly because it kind of let Heather almost be like her own orchestra.
Yeah, so we'll play the beginning, and then in the middle, there's this kind of dueling violin action.
I'll skip up to it. So Heather had 3 violin parts throughout this whole song that she kept building on and building on and building on based off the suggestion of our producer. And again, we never would have probably done that much to the part where like we added the piano and we're like, okay, it needs something more. And like, let's just add to it and add to it. And it just became this kind of almost orchestral violin part. So I'll just play where the end, I'll start the beginning and then I'll skip to that kind of solo part. So you don't have to waste your time with the whole stuff. So here we go. And these are layered piano parts too. So you can see kind of like the major progression there. It's just kind of fun to see like how, and I think studio time allows us to get a little bit more creative than we tend to default to when it's just us, which I think there's a beauty in that in itself too, but I think it's fun to expand on songs when you have the opportunity to, that you would not do normally live. And I think it's kind of,
I remember the first time Jordan played that back for us after kind of putting the pieces together, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like I think I started crying, and I was just like, it's so like pretty, and like not that what we do is not pretty, but it's just more than,
there's more emotion to it, almost
it's more
like,
than
again,
what I
like
can
the
do
orchestra and things
in a live moment. And it's just like, oh, like it kind of took me back to orchestra or being in a quartet, and it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
I love it.
No, you're a great string section. Like you know.
We just gotta grow a few more arms to keep up with
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that that transitions us kind of nicely. I wanted to open it up just to ask anybody if they have any questions. If you go down to the bottom of the screen, there should be a little chat button that you can ask us questions if anything has caught your eye or your ear. But that what we were just talking about transitions a little bit into a question we have from Kyle Stedman, who says, I'd love to hear more about the difference between playing violin in a folk duo versus playing viola in a symphony orchestra. Can people who are good at one usually be good in the other?
That's on
so,
you guys.
yeah, so I think this is you and me.
I feel like it just very much depends on the person. It's very individual. Not everyone who can play like like I don't even know what to call it, like band violin, if you will. Fiddle. Yeah, I guess you can call it fiddling. Not everyone who fiddles can do orchestra, and not everyone who does orchestra does fiddle. It's kind of it just depends kind of how, if it can cross over.
Yeah,
I think it helped
does
in your
take
regard.
some time.
You started that way though. You started with the orchestral.
I started with the orchestra, but with a family very much where we would just kind of sit and play. And so early on, like probably 11 or 12, like a couple years into playing, my dad would be like, well, let's play Joy to the World in G. And I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. But yeah, I mean, what's your experience with that?
I mean, I would
over
1,000% agree with that. That it's really like individuals and both what their background is and what their interests are. I think there's a Venn diagram certainly of people who have great skills being able to like hang in a band, and like obviously there's a lot of really particular things you have to know how to do to be really good at that. And a lot of those are the same skills you need to be a good orchestral musician. You have to be good at listening, good at being, good interpersonal skills. But also there's, some things that you need to do as a orchestral musician that are, other than that. And I think there's people in the center who can kind of like go to both worlds if they're interested in that. And some people kind of specialize. I played in some bands when I was in high school, but I haven't done that in a while. So I would feel like
if you'd like
pretty
to join
insecure.
If you'd like to join us for our next show, no.
Well, I've played.
I'll come to your next show.
One summer at like string camp. I played viola for like a minute in a quartet. I cannot read the music. I can't read it. I'm just like, I don't know. And like the strings are one off. So I could probably play it by ear. Like I could do the fiddling stuff, but I would be like, I don't know where middle C is. I can't.
I mean, you should think about it for your next album when you're doing the multi-tracking string parts. Maybe get that viola back out.
We'll just hire you for that. I think.
If you go through the album, you'll hear some cello work.
Cool.
I do about 10% of the cello on it. I can fake my way through it with very long notes, but the very first song on the album, there's amazing cello work on there, and it's not me for sure, but it is so, again, it's a very sad, depressing song, but it's so beautiful. And the guy that we hired to do it just did an amazing job. And so again, talking about recording, we sent him like our scratch track of just like a basic, like, this is what we're doing, just put together some stuff basically. And he sent us back a few different files of things that would work. And it was all just
great.
Amazing. Yeah. Like it was so hard to pick like
what parts to use, what didn't.
Use?
Yeah. Because it's hard because like there's a few chunks where we just cut it. mainly for the mood of the song to build. But I was like, oh, but it's so pretty. I don't want to. But it helps the song build, you know.
Like,
and
can I
it's
just
like
put this
those
on
calls.
my phone? It's
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the interesting things. I saw a song. Okay,
there's more
so
questions.
for clarification, it's we did not win a Grammy, which I would love to have won a Grammy.
That's next year.
Yeah, that's next year. We were gonna submit this album to the Grammys, but I tried to do it a week late.
No!
So not to say it would have won, but it would make me feel like really cool. But so the Grammys are what we won. It's the Rockford Area Music Industry Awards, and the 4 that we won were Best Composers, Best Song or Song of the Year, Album of the Year, and
Critics' Choice.
Critics' Choice.
Wow.
And so to answer the secondary part of that question, typically they have these live, and the last 2 years obviously they did not.
Yeah, last year
it was
this year we're virtual.
So last week is when they did it, last Saturday. And I am a photographer. I was shooting a wedding that day, so I got home, made myself a cocktail, and I was like, oh yeah, the Grammys were posted on YouTube. So
Whereas I have no excuse. I was at home and just forgot about it.
Yeah, so I went on. I was like, oh, let's just see if we won, and we did not win our category, which is
for acoustic folk
country, I think is where we land. We did not win that one, so I was like, oh man, another year.
That's a bummer. Maybe next time.
And then so I skipped around a little bit. I listened to the performances that were there and everything, but somehow there's this like 10-second chunk where it announced all 4 of these things that we won that I just blew over, and I did not see it.
That you actually like swept.
Oh no. We were looking for it, and I was like, they're supposed to be here somewhere. And I went to the end, they weren't there. I was like, maybe they forgot to put them in.
We were out to lunch on Sunday. Jesse gets a text from a mutual friend of ours saying, congrats on all the Grammy wins.
He's like, you just Eric Clapton that. I was like,
we thought he was being sarcastic. We're like, yeah, man, it was great to win.
He was like, no, but really, you swept it. I was like, no, we didn't. Oh. So somebody else had to tell us about it. And so he sent me screenshots of all these. And I was like, what? Where did you see that? He was like, it was on YouTube. I was like, I watched YouTube. I'm gonna have to go back and look. So it turned out that we did that. So
but we are very excited. We've been nominated a few years since 2016 for our category, and we haven't won, which is fine. There's other great artists. But this year the album just did its thing, apparently.
Yeah. But next year the Grammys.
Yeah.
But
we're trying to come up with a way that we can re-release it to make this
to go into
album
2021
new again, so we can do it.
I think I'm just gonna delete it online and then re-release it in 2021.
There you go.
Because it didn't count this year.
So the song that won was that last one that we played called Out of Time. And so that someone was asking which song won. That's on that album.
Yep, that's the one with the piano and violin orchestra built out.
Winning hasn't changed anything for our lives yet. I mean, we haven't been out in public together since Sunday. So
I'm expecting to be flooded with fans.
I just run up to us,
like the
safely,
Beatles.
hand us some flowers from a distance, and we'll be good.
Oh man. What night are we playing at Prairie Street?
So we do have some shows coming up that we'll share with you. Someone's asking about playing at Prairie Street Brewing Company. That show is on Monday, June 14th, 6:00. So you guys can come down to the beautiful river, hear us play some tunes. We will be doing a live stream on Facebook in a couple of weeks on Thursday, May 13th.
Yes.
If you want to tune in for that as well. We call them our Caged Bird series sessions.
Yes.
That's really good.
That was
yeah. I think I didn't really address this too, because a lot of people do ask, and we rarely ever tell this to you asked, I think, way earlier, and I didn't get into this where we started or how our band came to be. And people ask all the time where the name come from. And I'll just get into that quick too, because we don't often talk about it. and I've more or less made an elaborate thought on what it means, which I will still stand behind. But initially, we liked the idea of kind of Americana music and stuff came from a lot of, again, storytelling. I love a lot of the feel of old folk music. So we were thinking like coal mining and this and that. And back in the day, they would use canaries, obviously, to test the air quality in mines while they're mining. And that's where that came from. And then so I elaborated on that. I was like, well, initially when I was playing solo, I was pretty much ready to give up musically as a whole, I think. And so like to me, the band, because everybody was like, which one of you is the canary? Whatever.
Who's
I was like,
lonely
who's
and who's the canary?
To me, the band is the canary. It was our last effort to say, like, if this dies, I'm getting out of the music scene, and so
you can see where the emo comes in.
I'm just like, I'm too heady. I'm a heady person.
So dramatic.
Yeah.
Lots of feelings. I love
it. So that's where that came from. So I meant to share that earlier.
No, thank you so much.
I'm going to jump in here because we're at the end of our time, but I wanted to, if there's any more questions, put them in the chat. We can probably answer one more. Well, I feel like I just want to thank you guys so much for being here and kind of sitting on the other side and listening, which I love that I get to do that sometimes. I thought what was so interesting was thinking about how the foundation that no matter whether you play classical or Americana, that there's this foundation of practicing and theory and all of these things that go into it. And listening to you guys talk about the composition process and the discovery process, and Heather and Jesse, you guys talking about discovering things in your own music and other people's music and writing it. And Rhea, you talking about when you're rehearsing, how you're thinking about that and tying it, both of you, to the conductors. Like, I think what's been really cool about all of these local pairings sessions has been seeing how many similarities there are, that music is kind of music, and that no matter what comes out, like there's so many commonalities there, and how, you hear how like art brings people together, music brings people together. And I think we all feel that performance wise, but even when you listen to musicians that you guys are, your daily musical lives are in different kind of spheres, but the process and the emotions and the input is so similar. And I think that's like just another layer of the onion of how the arts really do bring people together, that no matter what the art, no matter what people are doing or what the outcome is, that there's this similarity, and that it, I think that's really meaningful. And it's been really cool to kind of hear those connection points thread through your conversation from this end, like, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. So I think that's been really, really cool to hear. So I think this is going to be just, thanks for coming. And I hope that everyone that's watching will get to go hear concerts outside at Prairie Street. So you can be distanced and safe and all that. And Rhea will be digitally soon. And hopefully the RSO will be back live soon.
Hopefully, yeah.
Everyone.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions for now, so we'll wrap up. Thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to our participants who came on and listened. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. And hopefully we'll see you all in person soon. Stay well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.